Hello and welcome, guys. For this episode, I have some bad news. So, I literally just recorded the entire match, or so I thought, played it from start to end, and I opened up OBS just like this to go and turn off the recording, and apparently it never started. I don't know if I forgot to start it, or if I clicked it and it didn't register, or something along those lines, but instead, I guess I have to do the next best thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and walk you guys through the match, I guess, after the fact. It's definitely not my preference, but I would rather you guys be able to see the match than for me to just say, "Oh, this was how the result was. This is what happened." So, yeah, I guess I'm just going to do this instead. So, I have my games pulled up over here. We played against Mogus. Spoiler, there were 3 games, so can't really hide that from you guys. And we ended up on the play here, so you'll have to bear with me because I don't particularly know how to use the software that well as far as playback. So yeah, we're on the play, we're greeted with this hand, and I do believe we keep. You'll notice now, I noticed this after the fact, but we do have all 3 copies of our pseudo strongholds here, so hasting a Titan as soon as we get into play is going to be a little problematic, but other than that, like, we have the Amulet, we have a potential turn 2 or turn 3 creature with the Summoner's Pact. If we draw any Bounce Land or any Azusa or Dryad or something along those lines, then this hand will be able to power out a Titan pretty fast. So the only downside being that obviously with this setup, it's going to be unlikely we're able to haste here. So we just go from there. We play out our Amulet on 1, as you might expect. We choose to go with the Forest instead of the Stronghold here because of the possibility for drawing something like a Grazer. And our opponent goes turn 1 Tron Land and Chromatic Star. So, without the, dang it. Without the presence... Why is it not paused? Okay. Without the presence of the Chromatic Star, we might assume Eldrazi Tron, but the Chromatic Star screams Green Tron to me. And so with that in mind, they play their star and pass. If they had like a scrying or a stirrings or something, they most definitely would have played it. So I'm thinking the reason they're saving this star is that they have Tron next turn. But we'll just have to find out. And so here, we're going to go ahead and pack for an Azusa and play it. Because we just have to get these lands out as fast as possible. Trying to keep up with our opponent. And we also have Vesuva to copy Ghost Quarter here, so getting these Vesuvas out as copies of Ghost Quarters to start disrupting their Tron is going to be our best angle of attack. So we play our Azusa, we're going to play 2 lands, and one of them is going to be this Vesuva copying Ghost Quarter. And then we're going to, on their upkeep, blow up one of their Tron lands. They didn't show us any relevant information as to which Tron land to hit, so at this point it's just a 50-50 flip, so point out the mine, I believe. Yep. And from that point, we just wait and see what they do. And they don't have another Tron land that turn, which is obviously great for us. So here, we're paying for our pact, of course. We're going to play another Ghost Quarter here. Oh, that's not a Ghost Quarter. My bad. So we decide because... Let me explain this choice. We decide because they didn't play another Tron land, they're not going to have access to Tron next turn anyways, and so we need to make sure we have green sources in play for our Titan. With just the Forest and the Garenbrig, we're possibly exposed to... I mean, admittedly, we have enough green here if we just want to use 6 mana to hardcast a Titan, so maybe playing in a Ghost Quarter would have been fine, but I don't think it's really going to make a difference. If we need to, we can get a bounce land to pick up the Garenbrig copy and replay it as a Ghost Quarter, but I don't think that'll be necessary here, so we're going to get in for our 1 point of damage as well. They make their second Tron land drop here, And of course, we're just going ham with our Titan, so we're of course leaving a blue floating here for the Tolaria West shenanigans. I think we're gonna Tolaria West out a Dryad, perhaps, is the line. So here we get the Garrison and the Tolaria West. Garrison providing the mana to haste our Titan, and the Tolaria West to go get a Dryad. Since we already have the Valakut in play, we're going to be able to get quite a few triggers off of our attack. And that's pretty much just game. And in fact, it was just game because our opponent conceded as soon as the Dryad hit play. So, that was game 1. Let's go to game 2. Again, I do apologize for the format of this video. It's very strongly not my preference to do game replays like this. Generally, I find commentary in the moment to be more enlightening and much more useful for learning, so we just gotta deal with what we got. So, maybe there's a way to look at the sideboard here. Yeah. So, here we've boarded out the main board explosives, all the explorers, one of the stirrings, and the Bajuka Bog. We've brought in Force of Vigor, we brought in 2 copies of Beast Within, we brought in 2 negates, a Pact of Negation, and a Rex Sage, I believe. And those inclusions, the negates and the Pact of Negation, are obviously for either a Karn. The Pact of Negation is specifically for tutoring up with a TOS once a Titan comes down, especially if we're weak to losing our Titan. But it also just kind of helps seal up the game. We board out Explore because the matchup is too fast for a 2-mana sorcery, unfortunately. And we board out on the Bajuka Bog because if they play something like Karn the Great Creator, then this Bog actually represents a liability against, like, exiling their artifacts lets them get them back with the Karn GC, so Bog's not really doing much here. It's also a single mana source, so we'd rather have the 3rd Stirrings, just for a little bit of consistency. There also was a potential argument for including Dismember, but since we already won game 1, and we don't know for sure whether they would be playing something like Thought-Knot Seer, which would be the main reason for including Dismember, we're not going to opt with that for this game. Obviously, being on the draw is a bit of a shame with this hand. We do keep, of course, because we have our turn 1 Amulet. We have a pact to potentially find an Accelerant. I remember discussing about potentially not leading on a turn 1 Amulet here off the breeding pool, because it's not really feasible for us to pack 4 and play an Azusa the turn after. We don't really need to do that, and playing the Amulet exposes us to a Nature's Claim. But since we draw the Azusa here, as you might have noticed, now we're going to go ahead and lead on this breeding pool and the Amulet, and if we get Nature's Claim, so be it. But, I mean, you can't pass up on turn 2 as Azusa, turn 3 Titan, so. And they do have the Nature's Claim, unfortunately for us. So we're going to play our bounce land and set up for a creature on turn 3 here. That's pretty self-explanatory. We're quite slowed down now, though. We were kind of reliant on this Amulet to power out one of these creatures early. So the Nature's Claim was pretty devastating there. We draw another Amulet, but it's not to our benefit to play it out. If we shock our breeding pool to play the Azusa, then both of these lands are going to enter tapped anyways. We can't just play an Amulet and then play a land, because then we don't have enough to cast a creature. So the line we opt to go for here is Azusa, putting in as many lands as possible, expecting that one of our lands is going to get Karned away this upcoming turn, and the hope that we top deck a bounce land so we can pay 1, play Amulet, play bounce land a couple times, and have enough mana to cast Primeval Titan. That would be the plan, at least. And all they have here is Wormcoil Engine, which is obviously fantastic news. A Karn would have been worst case. The best thing that we could have drawn here would have been any land put the Titan into play. Well, I guess not any land. It would have to be an untapped land. So the best draw would have been an untapped land here. Even a bounce land would have done it because we can float a mana with a breeding pool, play a bounce land, pick up the breeding pool, and then replay the breeding pool and use it for a mana. So not drawing a land here is pretty unfortunate. Here we're going to play the Amulet, which in retrospect, I don't think this is the correct line. When I was talking about it, I wasn't consider holding up Negate while at the same time being able to play a Dryad. So here we tap our 1 mana to play our Amulet, and then we're left with 4 mana in play, which forces us to hold up Negate instead of play a Dryad, because again here, if they play a Karn, we're in a really bad spot. So I think instead of playing the Amulet here, if it was just Gruul Turf and Field of the Dead play Dryad, we would have been in a much more commanding position. But alas, we do play the Amulet. And we're kind of at the mercy of what they do. If they have Ulamog here, then it would be rough for us, since there's nothing we can do about it. Gladly they don't, but they do have Worldbreaker, I believe, was the card. Yes. So this Worldbreaker had the potential to be very devastating. It was very risky on their part to go after the Amulet here. As I mentioned before, any bounce land nets us a Titan next turn. Any untapped land gives us a Titan. I think they should have gone after this Gruul Turf, especially knowing that we didn't play out any more lands that turn. So I think that's a huge mistake on their part. They definitely should have gone after this Gruul Turf. But also making our Negate look really sad here. Negate is generally very good in the matchup, and Worldbreaker is not a usual one from Tron, but yeah. I'm not really worried so far about the Wormcoil engine, but since we lost our Amulet, there's no real point to keeping the Azusa in play. Well, now I say that, that's not entirely true. So we did draw a bounce land. If we had chosen not to block with the Azusa, we could have made that play, like I said, to put the Titan into play that turn by picking up a breeding pool. We chose not to play around that, and then we got punished by drawing the Garrison. But luckily, we can still pick up a land and hold up our Negate here, so not the end of the world. We are quite a bit behind, though. Obviously, no blocks. Hoping that this Dryad survives so we can play a turn out with some Valakut triggers. Second Wormcoil is pretty annoying. That represents a huge clock. We would need to get tokens from Field of the Dead, but if we do that, then... Okay, so I remember what happened this turn. I considered whether I should go for a Field of the Dead line or keeping extra land drops to get extra triggers out of the Dryad here. I think the line was to get Valakut plus Vesuva, but in any case, I should have played this Field of the Dead first, because Valakut plus Vesuva actually, we would have gotten the triggers from the initial getting the 2 lands from this Primeval Titan, but yeah, so I went with the line that got more Valakut triggers, but I think it might have been correct actually to go for the field here. Obviously, in retrospect, there's a lot of different plays that you can make, so we get the Valakut and the Vesuva. And here we're just pointing the triggers at our opponent, because killing these Wormcoil engines and making additional tokens doesn't really benefit us, sadly. And then here we're going to pick up the Gruul Turf and play another Valakut. I don't know, actually. Maybe pointing the triggers at a Wormcoil would have been fine, because then this additional Valakut could have, or would have killed... I need to speak a little less hasty, because we end up being able to kill a Wormcoil and kill its 2 tokens anyways. But here we're in a bad spot, because if they're able to answer our Titan, then we're going to be forced to chump block with a Dryad. And then from there, it's going to be really hard to come back. The Summoner's Pact would be able to get a Titan and play it, but it wouldn't give us enough blue mana to transmute for like transmute a Tolari West at that point. So we're kind of at the mercy of what our opponent does here. I don't think there was a line to leave up negate in that turn. You definitely have to play the Titan, so rough spot. And so our opponent has the Karn. They're gonna exile our Titan, obviously. And worst of all, they have a Thought-Knot Seer. So not only do we lose the Titan in play, we lost the Titan we had lined up. We now have to chump block with their Dryad. We have to draw a Titan to even have a chance at this game, in which case we can make some blockers with field and maybe still come back. But even if we get another Titan into play, Karn's just going to eat that one up, so we're forced to use this Tolari West to get a Titan after a Titan that we would have to top deck. So here we're pretty much guaranteed to lose. Unfortunately, we top deck an Ancient Stirrings, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I just conceded here. So yeah, that was game 2. I think this game would have gone a little better for us on the play, but unfortunately, I just happened to have the Thought-Knots here. Being able to play a Titan, and I mean, we wouldn't be able to transmute the TOS anyway. So I think even without the Thought-Knots here, we would have been in a rough spot. So, although I guess potentially, I think it was a turn before we could have left the Sanctuary and play on purpose so that we'd had enough to use green here and the Sanctuary and have 2 blue to transmute, but I wasn't really thinking that far ahead, so. And besides, having the bounce land in hand represents multiple more triggers with the Valakuts, so there's definitely an argument to keeping the bounce land in hand as well. Anyways, that was game 2. So now, we're coming in for game 3, and we do make some sideboard changes. Let me see if I can show those to you. So, we brought in a couple of dismembers, and we sided out the 3rd Stirrings and the Force of Vigor. Because Force of Vigor is pretty awful in the face of Thought-Knot Seers. It's pretty situational anyways, since the best thing it can really do is hit an O-Stone. Hitting map on the play is kind of rough, because it puts you down 2 cards, so Force of Vigor is not at its best. And we also didn't see any Karn the Great Creator, so we're not really anticipating needing to blow up anything like an Ensnaring Bridge, or something along those lines, so Force of Vigor can go, and then the extra Ancient Stirrings just is kind of a flex slot, so we bring in 2 dismembers to be able to have an out to those Thought-Knot Seers. At least we're on the play again. I almost went and clicked it, because I felt like I was playing a game here. So, hold on. I wanna back up and talk about the mulligan decisions. Let me open this back up. I think if I hit this button, it'll go by 1 action at a time. Okay, so this is the first hand that we're greeted with. And there are a couple issues with this hand. First of all, we don't have an untapped source to play the Grazer on 1, right? If this were a forest, then going turn 1 Grazer, Civic Growth Chamber to pick up the forest would line us up for a potential 3-drop the turn after. It just gets us on the ground faster. I think that's a turn 4 Titan with Garen Brig. Perhaps. Anyways, it's not relevant. We don't have that. We don't have an Amulet. We don't have another ramp source beyond this Grazer that we're only going to be able to play on turn 2 anyways, and we have this Dismember here. That could be anywhere from a dead card to being great against a Thought-Knot Seer. This hand's just too variable. It does have Titan mana, I suppose, and it has a little bit of ramp, but it's just too slow. On the play, we can do better. So we mulligan this hand, and we are greeted with a very similar hand, actually, but the key difference is the untapped green on 1. So here we have the 4 mana to activate a Garen Brig. We have 2 different ramp sources to get that into play. All we need is a Titan. So we pitch this Dismember. Yep. And we play our Grazer on 1. I'm going to let this play out like I was before. We play out this Grazer. We put in to play the Valakut, and we plan to Garen Brig out the Dryad the turn after. They just go Tron land, 1-drop, go. It's a good thing it's not a map. So we go ahead and go for the Dryad line that was discussed previously. We play our Sanctuary, pick up our Garenbrig. We have guaranteed Titan mana next turn because of this breeding pool being a forest. So we're looking good on that front. We just need to top deck a Titan. So they're going to spin some wheels. Looks like they have a scrying. So now we know from the fact that they lined up a mine, they have a guaranteed Tron next turn. So we're looking like we're in pretty bad shape if they happen to have a Karn, but unfortunately, we do not graciously top deck a Titan like sometimes in the past. So instead, we're forced to play out our lands. We just put our hand on the table here because we need to get as much mana into play as possible if a Titan's ever going to work out. And we take our swing for 2, and that's it. We just hope our opponent doesn't have it. And they do. So here, they play a Karn, and they exile Dryad, which I think is a egregious mistake on their part. Because obviously we top deck the Titan, we're able to Garenbrig it out and punish them. If they had Castle Garenbrig, what am I saying? If they had minus Karn on our Sanctuary, I mean, we could pressure the Karn for 2 damage, but that doesn't really matter, to be honest. Hitting the Sanctuary prevents us from casting Titan this turn. And, yeah. However, the one thing that's awkward about this situation is this Karn has the ability to minus on our Titan. So usually the play, if they didn't have a Karn already out, would be to Titan, get a Ghost Quarter and a Bounce Land, pick up the Ghost Quarter and replay it, Ghost Quarter or Tron Land, and then they're basically out of the game. Like, it would be really hard for them to come back from that. I mean, they could just naturally have the other Tron Land and potentially play something, but we can't make that play because if we make that play, we just get our Titan exiled by this Karn and we're back to square 0. Except they have 6 cards in hand. So here, our Titan is intended to set up another Titan instead. So we play out our guy. Wow, it does it 1 mana at a time here. That's pretty crazy. And we're setting up for a Talari West. I'm just going to play it out this way. So we're going to search for a Talari West and a blue bounce land so that we don't have... So we can immediately transmute for and play a Titan the turn after, I believe. Do we have the mana for that? Yeah. So these 2 lands sets up the transmute. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, and a Garenbrig to activate. So this means that even if they minus their Karn on our Titan, and they have to have an answer to the next Titan, and this plays around Thought-Knot Seer as well because we're leaving a T-West in hand that they obviously can't take. So they're in pretty bad shape now, actually. Obviously, no reason to attack with our Arboreal Grazers. And again, we're just going to pass it back and see what they do. Chromatic Star is a good one. If they just went Tower Ulamog to hit our blue source and our Titan, that would have been pretty bad, but they don't have it. So they minus Karn on our Prime Boy. And here, they play the following. Wormcoil Engine. The classic. So, Wormcoil Engine, not a problem at all. We don't care about Wormcoil Engine at all because we have 2 Trump blocks lined up. And, I mean, it does potentially trade with a Titan, but other than that, this is not clocking us in any meaningful way. However, they do play out a couple of maps, so that's very unfortunate because this Titan could do what I had said the turn previous, right? Transmute for a Titan, play it, search for a bounce land and Ghost Quarter, pick it up, play the Ghost Quarter, and Ghost Quarter one of these 2 lands, probably the mine. And if they didn't already have maps in play, they would potentially not have access to Tron the turn after, and then from there it's pretty much just elementary. However, the maps cut that line off, so not great for us. We do still have access to a second T-West, so I believe the play here is to go ahead, get our Titan into play. I'm going to let it play. Get our Titan into play, and set up another Talari West. So we go with Talari West and Blue Land to play around something like Karn minus on a Blue Land, or, yeah, Karn minus on a Blue Land, or a World Breaker, which we saw in the game prior. So we still have our blue source here to be able to transmute T-West. Obviously, we're putting ourselves a little bit more behind for Field of the Dead, but that's not really what this game is about yet, so it could get to that point, but especially since this is our last Talaria West, but we'll have to see what happens here. Okay, so they play a Blast Zone and they pass. With 4 cards in hand, I mean, this could represent like a Dismember or something, but I mean, we gotta play what our hand has. If we Talaria West for another Titan, you know, we're gonna be trading this Titan with a Wormcoil Engine or giving them another turn with access to Tron. So instead, I do a little bit of math, and that involves attacking, letting our Titan potentially die, and just getting 2 Vesuvas. The first one copying Valakut, second one copying a Growth Chamber, or any other bounce land, doesn't matter. And that should allow us to kill our opponent, even though they gain 6 from the Wormcoil, because we're going to get 2 triggers for both lands that enter when the Titan attacks, right? We're going to get a Valakut and a Growth Chamber, so that's going to be 4 triggers on that. We're going to pick up the Growth Chamber. Hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. So firstly, after paying for our pact, we have to get a Dryad into play. We have 6 mana here, so that's 2 blue and 1 to transmute, plus 1 more, and these 2 to play Dryad. So we can get Dryad into play. We attack, we get Vesuva copying Valakut, and another Vesuva copying Growth Chamber, and that's 4 triggers. We pick up the Vesuva that copied Growth Chamber. We play it again as land 1, with our Dryad in play, we get 2 land drops. So we play land 1, copying Growth Chamber again, doing a couple more triggers, and we pick it back up, and we play it again as a copy of Valakut, doing 3 more triggers. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 triggers times 3 is going to be 27 damage. They're going to go up to 24 from the Wormcoil Engine lifelink, and that's enough to kill them. So we force them to either have the Dismember or die. Amulet doesn't really change this math. Although, I suppose it was possible to play Amulet and then double strike our Titan. I don't know. I didn't really look into that line, to be honest. So we go for the play that was discussed earlier. We point some Valakut triggers at their face. They're going to trade with our Titan. They go up to 12. We play a Growth Chamber. Pick it back up. And play a Valakut and kill them. And that was the match. We got it 2-1. A little bit closer than I prefer then, but still works out. Made up for the kind of blunder in match 2. I'm sure that you have seen it, but if you have not, we had 2 Summoners Pact triggers on the stack. I intended to pay 2 green and 2 of any non-green color to pay for the first pack trigger, and then leave 2 green floating to pay for the second one, but I didn't realize it had auto-paid for the green mana, so instead, I clicked no, trying to cancel the payment, and it just registered as do not pay for the pack and die. So I lost game 2 against that match, sadly. But we made up for it by winning this match. Again, I apologize. I really don't prefer to post content like this, just going back through the game replays. But anyways, hopefully you still can get something out of this. You can still glean some information. And leave your comments below. I do read them. Any suggestions on how to improve the content or things that you might want to see. It's all good. So yeah, that's it. Redface Menace, signing off.